these concepts are total projection of your mind, but to just speak the truth, that means that you need to know the truth. All right, party people, we back with another reflection on the daily Vedantic, and today's episode, and I think I'm going to do maybe 2 or 3 of these, is going to be on Swami stories. So stories with the man himself. And I might just keep it super simple, start chronologically with some of these stories, at least over the next 2 or 3 days. And today's story comes from the first time that I met Swami. This was in India about 4 years ago. It was COVID and they had just opened it up for international flights. Had to do all the rigmarole of getting the documentation and going to get tests and things like that before the flight there and when landing. Then I had to stay in quarantine for 7 days at the ashram because at that time Swami was 93 years old. And his brother had just passed away from COVID. So they were taking all of the necessary precautions. This was maybe 8 months into COVID shutting down the world, and I had to spend 7 days in quarantine in one of the buildings that was just separated for, it was just deemed the building for quarantine in a room. There's no exercise or no leaving the room for 7 days. It's funny that sounds somewhat hard to do, but the whole world was shut down. So the whole world was kind of used to it. I remember not even being remotely fazed by, okay, I got to spend 7 days in quarantine. And it's just goes to show you whatever your backdrop is, makes the foreground, changes the dynamic with the foreground. If your background, it's like, something can be thoroughly pleasurable if you're thirsty enough. Tiniest glass of water ends up being the best moment of the day. And that's what this felt like. It was like, God, just going to India, this is so cool. Going to the ashram, this is, 6 years in the making. This is amazing. And then 7 days, okay, whatever, we'll put up with it. And it'll be worth it for the 2 days that I'd have with Swami 4 years ago. And I had studied the philosophy for, like I said, maybe 6 years beforehand. Loved it. Woke up every morning and studied it, but I had never felt a really strong call to go see Swami. I almost felt like it was bothering the universe to go there and get time from his busy schedule and all of these dumb notions that I had. And finally it was like, anything could happen to him at this age. I should probably go over there and not take this chance for granted. So glad that I did. Went over there, and during our first interaction, it was over lunch. Invited to his little bungalow building where he and his wife and his daughter, who at that point, Sunanda's maybe 60 and 65. And so the 3 of them lived there, and we went up to, you go up some stairs and you go to a room where the main meals are served. And so I sit down at the table and a few other people join, and some of the senior people at the ashram. And then he comes down the stairs and comes down slowly, as you would imagine. And just a beautiful simplicity to what he's wearing, just regular, same clothes that he wears every day. And for every lecture, very simple clothes, just walking, kind of pacing his steps down the stairs. And we meet, exchange, all of the routine things, name, and I'm kind of thinking, like, since I'm one of 8 people in this room about to eat a meal, I should probably be somewhat a fly on the wall. And yet I think it was entertainment for them. This Americans come all the way from California for this. And this is kind of I apparently learned this afterwards. I was the first person and the only person allowed in during the quarantine period of all these people that wanted to, don't know what good karma allowed me to get through all of their procedures, protocols. But out of all these people that wanted to come visit Swami during the whole world stopping, somehow I got the okay, unbeknownst to me. So I'm thinking I'm just like one of 25 different meetings in the course of that day or week. And yet this is this one outside visitor sitting down. And so realized after 2 or 3 minutes that all eyes were a little bit on my interactions with Swami. And everybody kind of wanted to, it was maybe a break in the typical programming for them to see what I would say or what we would talk about. And I remember after kind of the food's being served and I'm just sitting there reverentially, somewhat quietly, he started to ask me a few questions. And the most meaningful thing within the first 10 minutes of talking to him was a bit of a Swami stiff arm where I thought I was going to say something. This happened a few times. He's so warm, but when you say something that isn't truth, he doesn't let it slide. It's very diplomatic, but it's like guiding a child riding a bike. I'm so used to people thinking that I'm saying things that are somewhat wise or honestly much more frequently just going along with what's being said out of politeness or with some opinion that's being offered. Just going along with it because there's no contrast in their own opinion. So this is very surprising to me because I said something that I thought was very innocuous, or innocuous at best, maybe at worst, I thought was noble. Because I told him as I was expressing how I came to revere the philosophy of Vedanta, which I've covered in many of these podcasts before, and in discussing love of his different books, I said that I felt a calling, I feel a calling to be a bridge between the East and the West. Something that I may have said 3 or 4 different times in different social scenarios where I felt like it was appropriate. And after I said that, he looked down, like as I'm saying something I think, or I'm hoping gets maybe a pat on the back. And it was true. I felt that calling. Little did I know it was not a noble calling. It was more of the mind and the ego than anything else. But he started to shake his head like I just disappointed him. And he looked up and he said, "Don't be a bridge. Just speak the truth." Don't be a bridge. Just speak the truth. It's interesting because to be a bridge, to sit in between, it's neither here nor there. You can't build a home on a bridge. It's not where any of us are meant to stay. But the truth, if you can live in truth, people will build bridges to you. As Swami says often, become like a lake. And people will drive pipes into you. You don't need to do anything. This really rocked me when he said that it not only was a deep sentiment that it was easy to perceive the depth right in that very moment, but it kind of shifted an entire identification with something less than the truth itself. I remember when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a sports agent because I was like, well, I'm not going to be a great basketball player. I could be a decent one, but not a great one. But if I want to be around it, I could settle for being a sports agent. And I just thought, oh, that'll be close to the thing that I care about. But doing it and administrating for others to do it are very, very different things. And this idea of being a bridge between the East and the West, when this philosophy just says these concepts are a total projection of your mind, you end up almost by design settling for neither here nor there. But to just speak the truth, that means that you need to know the truth. To speak the truth, of course, you'd say it in the language of the audience in front of you. You'd find not just the common language between you, but the common analogs, the common themes, common experiences. If you're going to speak it, then you're obviously, for me, I'm going to speak it in English in terms that the other person can understand. And I have not even scratched the surface on the truth, capital T, truth itself. But that was a reckoning of this tyranny of low expectations that I had for myself. This self-rejection, as we touched on in previous Daily Vedantic episode, this self-rejection of, I'm not going to speak from the truth. I'm just going to be this bridge helping people get to it. But even that is so foolish, because how would I even know how to get people to it unless I knew where it was? Unless I knew what it was. I could have been and could be, if I'm not careful, a bridge to just some spectacle. Something that I could charge people for, and there's people walking across it both directions, so it must be useful, and yet it is a bridge to an amusement park of fascinating concepts, of interesting tidbits and sound bites, but not the truth. Calling is to be that lake that people are building their own bridges to. There people are building that are, like I said, driving their pipes into. And you're just being. And that story it's a reorientation for anyone that hears it, that listens to these reflections, finds them interesting, finds them provocative, or finds them truthful. Not in some academic sense, but in your own experiences. Finds this to be, as said so often, a manual for living well, to where this manual, these reflections and philosophical notions just happen to help you live well. And if that's the case, as you listen to this and as you inevitably find yourself trying to describe it to those around you, as you feel a calling to be a bridge between concepts that you might find extremely valuable, notions that have helped you, and a bridge between those around you, prioritize getting to the truth. Getting to the truth over the duty of communication, of what feels like the truth to others. Then even in your communication, it's a pursuit of uncovering the truth itself. That's what these episodes are. That's what they are for me, is me diving into these reflections, and just happen to have all this equipment from Magic Mind podcast, from previous podcast lives. I was like, okay, I'll flip this on. It seems to be helpful in our community. We have Venice Vedanta Club that has been around for the last year and a half. Keeps growing. People seem to find value in it. So why not do it through the medium that is so native to me and how I love discovering philosophy, and put these little things on YouTube? but not to be a bridge, but to help foster and develop the community. Here's the real reason. It's not to be a bridge. This whole experiment is built to foster and provide the community that myself, my wife, have not had in this pretty solitary journey. Help foster and develop the community that helps us discover the truth. So if you're part of that community, this is your 13th episode, and you are part of it in some digitally indirect way, for my own sake, for both my development and my own selfish desire, I would love for you to shoot a note you can shoot a note on Instagram, a DM to the Daily Vedantic. Join, and maybe we will help each other discover the truth, to be able to speak the truth. That's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.